The band is rocking out. We're sitting here in our studio ready to dive in to world events, pop culture events, historic pop culture events, and I'm happy to be back. It's Anytime with Ken and Alden. I'm Ken. I'm back. That's Alden. Hey, buddy.
Hello. Welcome back. You actually left my coast to go back to your coast. So really, it's more of a get out of here. Go back over to the West Coast.
Get out of here. It was weird texting you occasionally on the same time zones. It happens every so often in our lives. Sometimes when we're at celebrations, but to be in your time zone. The lesser of the time zones, because Pacific time is the best time zone.
Did you feel like any type of actual settling in process coming to the East Coast? Did it throw you?
This time it did. I got to tell you, it did. I've just started to recover. I'm not like, even I didn't have a problem adjusting to London and Paris. I maybe slept in a little bit the next. Well, we couldn't because of the celebration. Maybe that helped. You just kind of got an upper crust sandwich in your mouth and giggity. You just kind of got to it. Boston, 5 days in Boston. I never got my sleeping schedule. I was exhausted, couldn't sleep, and I'm usually great in hotels. Take that out of context if you want. And but I'm glad to be back. I was glad to be there. Glad to be back.
How are the shows? I mean, like, I know from talking to you, like, but a little bit here and there, but
good.
You
Shows
and Mark and other friends. I thought you were doing like 2 shows, but it was a few. It was quite a few.
Well, no, it ended up being 2 shows. We did stop by a club. We didn't want to kick anyone off stage on Friday night, but and I wouldn't have, Mark would have, but he didn't want to do that. But no, we did Laugh Boston with our friend Justine Marino, who's a local. If some of you know who Justine is, Justine the Machine, you should, if you don't know, check her stuff out. She's great. I've known her since 2007, and she had her family there. It was a cold, rainy night, sideways rain with wind blowing into your face, a little snow Thursday. And then we had a big show Saturday night at the Rockwell Theater, which was great. And I had texted you, Miss Ezra Furman played there 2 or 3 nights after we were there.
Yes, one of our pop rockin' artists. Yeah, that's awesome. Good stuff.
Yeah,
I haven't spent much time in Boston, but I'm from the Northeast. I love the Northeast. I am a either coast will do for me person, as long as it's like on a coast. I have no ill will toward the middle of the country, but when I think about fun, I don't think about the middle of the country.
I mean, I think about Nashville sometimes, but I haven't been to Nashville since 2008, and I've heard it's changed, got a little corporate. I don't know if that's even accurate, but I know what you mean. Yeah, and I had a lot of fun. It took me not only adjusting, but I think by Friday I was like, okay, I dig Boston's vibe. The whole place is a corner bar, as my friend Thad Williams described it. He'd lived there for 4 years, and we found some pubs. We went to the Bleacher Bar, which is inside Fenway Park or underneath center field. Okay. So it was a good time, man. Good time. And thank you for holding down the fort. And that sounds almost insulting to you. You are the fort. But you had 2 wonderful episodes up. We took 2 Fridays off. Just wasn't happening for both of us. It just couldn't work. But you, sir, had 2 wonderful episodes. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. If anyone wants to go back, those are videos that live on the channel that are different topics. We continued Anytime at the Movies. So we have our little, sub brands, Anytime News with Ken, Anytime at the Movies, me and Nikki sort of unpacking different topics and everything. And then we did a conversation with our friend Cooper, who's in the comments a lot as Boop, about being a transgender person on the internet, which people really seem to really like that conversation. We heard a lot of good things, and there weren't a lot of a-holes or anything, which was great. So thanks everybody for checking that out.
You know what? I checked in on the back end, and it's just the sad state of the world. I was in the back end this morning expecting, I bet there was a lot of, a-holes in there. Unless you cleaned a lot of them up. No, very supportive chat.
I cleaned one person up, and it didn't take much. And very chill. Very good group.
Very good group. That's good. So thank you. Those conversations. And we always want to point out, we do have the podcast feed. I've got to get the audio up of the last 2 episodes. Then we'll get up this one. That's been my bad. I traveling, forgot. So if you like listening on audio, want to take us with you in your ears, those will be up soon.
Indeed, indeed. And then one day we'll clone Ken and we'll have somebody to do that. I don't know. Hopefully.
Well, I quite frankly, I know I should release the Kraken, so to speak, and let you a little bit more of the back end on the podcast side. There's no reason not to. It's not like I'm hiding millions of dollars. You can see the 2 cents that are in there.
Hey, those 2 cents go a long way. That's the difference between pepperoni and no pepperoni. So
yeah,
sometimes, I'm
yeah.
gonna spring for the toppings.
You being an East Coast guy, the one little mishap that happened in Boston. I've said it on a few shows, so I don't want to remix it, and it's not a great story. But I had a problem ordering coffee in Dunkin' the first day where I didn't realize in Boston, and I don't know if it's just related to the New England area. You have to order your coffee with cream in it or not. You have to give them the instructions, and apparently a regular coffee is like cream. And out here, again in the best time zone.
Okay.
We have a little station over here. So you say room for cream, maybe, but you go to the station and then you can cream to your heart's desire and you can sugar it up as much as you want. This Dunkin' had the sugar, no cream.
Look, so at first I was like, well, yeah, of course, you always. But then it occurred to me, and I don't know if this is consistent in LA, but it might be by the company, by the chain. Because my entire life going to Dunkin', which is where my mom preferred to go when I was a kid. My mom would drive me to school when I was in, elementary. And then she would always stop and say, can I get a coffee? Light and sweet, cream, lots of cream, lots of sugar. So she would have to dictate that at Dunkin's. However, my entire life, whenever I've gone to a Starbucks, there's a station.
This is a great point. Mark loves Starbucks, but not for coffee. Mark's not a big coffee drinker. He's an iced tea drinker. So anytime he sees a coffee bean or Starbucks, we pull over. In La Jolla, one week we did 5 shows in La Jolla last year or so. We stopped at, no joke, in one day 5 Starbucks. He's got a problem with the iced tea. So every time I go, I don't love Starbucks coffee either, but I get they got the little pineapple refresher bullshit. Yeah. I get that. So we were in a Starbucks, but because I didn't think to look for the cream there. You have made a good point, sir.
Yeah, so Starbucks is good about the stations, or like a Starbucks cafe inside of a Barnes & Noble, how they have that partnership. They'll have a station. Dunkin' does not do the station. I have always asked at Dunkin' for the amount of cream and the amount of sugar. So it could be that.
And the guy wasn't happy. He was really not happy with me. He was really upset. He could probably hear my California accent. Jared the Dark Jedi says, "Let them cream," and I think we should all wear that on t-shirts. Let them cream.
Let them cream.
I want to have cream agency.
Cream agency is a theme today. I'm just looking at everybody's regular Kingsport Cow. Regular coffee is black like my soul. Yeah, I mean, since I've been on this diet, I've been doing pretty much only black. Maybe occasionally a bit of oat milk in there. Jen Murrow, light and sweet. Much like the legend Diane, light and sweet. Yeah.
And she's an East Coaster at heart, so yeah, that would make sense. Anyways, thank you all who've waited patiently for me to return to this wonderful show here. I'm glad to be here. We're going to have a discussion about how historic events form us, meaning we're going to talk about the death of O.J. Simpson and that weird, I don't even want to say complicated legacy. There's been an interesting roll call of traditional media sites that are like doing this weird like, O.J. Simpson died. Here's the complicated legacy. He's a murderer. He was a murderer.
Yeah. But my favorite, I just have to say, I'm so glad you brought this up because I forgot about it and now you reminded me. Yeah. The Entertainment Weekly tweet, which is not always the same as the actual headline. We should know. But the Entertainment Weekly tweet said, O.J. Simpson passes at, was it 76?
76, yeah.
At 76 years of age. The controversial actor, athlete, and murder suspect. Actor, first of all, actor before athlete is insane already. But both of those things before murderer
controversial.
Is wild.
And controversial
actor. No, a controversial actor is like, I don't know, Mel Gibson's a controversial actor.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. But we're going to talk about, there's a lot to discuss about it. He does have family, grandkids, and everything. We're going to get into, and I won't even say the nuanced weeds. We're going to talk about it all and how it, that event being the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman at the hands of what I would say and what Norm Macdonald would say was O.J. Simpson, how that and the trial left a big mark on my generation and the generations to follow. But it's something that's big in my heart and soul. We're going to talk about the effects of that and the after effects of that later on. But we have to, though, begin. Yeah, there you go. Joaquin Phoenix is a controversial actor. Absolutely. It's interesting. But before we go, our first segment is the simple question I ask you. Alden, what Ben Afflecks are we today?
Well, today we've got a double special because not only do we have Ben Affleck, we have Ken Affleck.
Yes.
We talked about it. This is there you after.
That's after the coffee.
After that cashier gave you shit for your Californian attitude.
That is the first day. That is Thursday morning. That is the coffee. That coffee, say it with me, Cal, in chat, that's all black. That is a black extra large coffee.
That's a black coffee. That's a man who's getting ready to light up a crowd with his comedy stylings, and he had to get shamed. But on the other side, we do indeed have an Affleck. I decided to go with a classic this week. I pulled this Affleck off of the top shelf. I find vintage. This is one of the first Affleck photos to go viral. Something about it. I realized we hadn't used it. For podcast listeners, this is full head of hair, maybe after shooting Argo, that long 70s looking hair, full beard, cigarette, drink, balcony. It's the whole package.
It's the thing.
Just being alive but not living.
What's he drinking there? He's got the ciggy and fingers. Like it kind of looks like he's in the studio with the Beatles in '68. Like he's got the cigarette's barely in his fingers. But is he drinking like a mineral water or a Heineken? I would love to know.
What's it not Pellegrino, Perrier, the Perrier water.
The Perrier.
Could be that. It's difficult to say, but this was Affleck before he rose like a phoenix.
Yes.
And got everything back together.
So, that's it.
Maybe this is where I'm at.
Yeah. And it just has that. It's that pain, but he's going to be okay vibe that we love about Affleck. Beautiful stuff there. And that's kind of where we are today, tracking the news and seeing what's going on. It's, I got to admit, I keep disconnecting Alden, and I'm trying to get back into my news flow. But, it was just like, you know what? The world's shite. I'll get back to it in a bit. And I feel disconnected. I want to know the daily tribulations of one Mike Johnson. Is he gone? Is Marjorie Taylor Greene going to take him down? Do they agree? Is he going to put the Ukraine support bill on the floor? Or because he's the evangelical who feels Putin destroying Ukraine is maybe step one of end times prophecy coming true? Is he going to hasten that occurrence? It's all fascinating. I just feel I got to get back into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, New York earthquake, eclipse, OJ in hell. Like, it's been a big week for things like firmly coming apart at the seams.
The earthquake, which I slept through, by the way. It happened about 10:30 local time, 10:38 local time, or whatever it was on that Friday or whatever. I was asleep. Ellis had texted me, "Hey, earthquake," and I didn't get up for another half hour. Missed it, but yeah, earthquakes, eclipse. I swear, and I again raised in the church. I feel people get excited. Like the evangelicals get excited, like, ooh, it's happening, right? Like it's and maybe I'm not saying it won't happen one day. Yeah. I'm not saying that one day I won't wake up to the sounds of trumpets in the sky and Jesus returning. I'm not saying that isn't going to happen. I'm just saying I think there's a glee. There's an underlying glee when they're like, ooh, earthquakes, eclipse, OJ's in jail or OJ's in hell. It's all OJ's in hell.
Well, we missed a key detail. The day before, so if we count Sunday as the beginning of the week, as we do outside of business, The Undertaker returned at WrestleMania. So really, it's the Undertaker brought with him the actual furies of the damned. It's weird, right? Like you're right that there's a glee, but it's not glee in a actual joyful sense, because you get something like the eclipse, right? And we're all like, oh, let's check it out. Let's put on our glasses and look at the eclipse with wonder, right? They don't approach it with wondrous glee. It's glee as if they're celebrating the series finale of life. They're not
Yeah.
like, wow, look at what God is able to do. He shows us visual spectacles.
Yeah.
It has to be bad in their minds.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, and it's just fascinating. I was reading a great tweet thread today about the don't underestimate the desire of Christian nationalists, and I want to separate that out from just everyday normal Christians, and I always want to make sure I try to do that. But the Christian nationalists who are like, but if Ukraine is destroyed by Russia, that might mean Jesus comes back, and it's just it sounds like a generalization, but it's there. It's there in a lot of the beliefs and policies, and. I look.
I love the way that they I love the way they treat and then maybe Jesus comes back. It's like when we talk about Darth Plagueis, we're like, this is the story where he finally enters.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if I mentioned here before, but I don't know. I think my dad's grown and changed a little bit, but I almost was not registered for school when I was like kindergarten, first grade. Because he was like, it's all over. Apocalypse is, Jesus is coming back. Ken doesn't even need to go to school. So he had to be convinced. My mom had to say, no, let's tell you what, just in case, let's register him.
Look, I feel what you're saying, husband. But so was it because of the threat of nuclear apocalypse that he thought?
Yeah, this would be early 80s, right? This is probably about 80, 81. You've got a lot going on in the world. And that's the thing too when it comes to end times prophecy. There's a former pastor I listen to his YouTube channel a lot. His name's Pat Conkey. And he is great because he is still a conservative. He's still pro-life. He's still these things, but he's very anti-Trump. But he does it in such a way where it's helping me understand how to maybe get people off that train or how people got there, even including my folks. He retains who he is, but he's fighting what I feel is for a good cause. It's fascinating stuff. And he had a great thing about this, that the end times prophecy is supposed to feel like it can be applied to the time you're in. It's vague by intention, if that's what you want to believe and that's where you want to go. So that you can look out your window and feel like, oh, yeah, maybe I should clean my house up. You know what I mean? And again, I don't, this isn't about agreeing or this, it's just so 1980, it felt like it, just like it feels like it now. So, right. That's what my dad's thought was. It's happening. It's happening. So Ken doesn't even need to learn arithmetic.
Interesting. Wow. There should be a reality show about. I mean, I'm sure someone's already pitched it, but I'm genuinely curious. I would love to see, not in a way that makes fun of them, but I would like to have honest documentary footage of doomsday preppers. And be can you walk me through the signs of where you're at?
Yeah.
And because if so much of it is about suggestion and the power of suggestion and the interpretation of signs, it's there could be signs in things that I don't even. I mean, Sydney Sweeney made a nun movie and everybody freaked out. So it's maybe that's part of it. They're making fun of our symbols, and then the earth shook, and then
Look,
interesting.
I was in church when Martin Scorsese made a Jesus movie. Everyone thought the world was going to burn down at that point.
Hell yeah, best Jesus movie, by the way. Last Temptation, best Last Jesus
Temptation
movie, and he's making another
Christ. One. He is.
He's making a New York Jesus movie.
Oh, okay. Is it not the sequel? Because I know for a while the. As you described earlier, controversial Mel Gibson has talked about, him and Caviezel going back, the Jesus franchise, the Jesus trilogy.
No, not them. Okay. Martin Scorsese is working on a film that is going to be the story of Christ told through a grimy, New Yorker type thing. It's going to so it's very him.
Look,
but, yeah.
My favorite version of the Christ story involves pod racing. So let's get into your version.
Hell yeah, brother. There was no father. Shout out Shmi. Yeah. Oh, real quick too, before we dive into the news, in personal news, I just wanted to highlight this. Man, good as time as any. 5 years ago today was the first meeting of Ken and Alden.
Oh yeah, 5 years. Look at that bright-faced me, and then you.
And guest in front of the show, we just had Darina, as well as the great Joseph Scrimshaw, who you work with. Yeah. Every week for 10 years at this point.
It's been 10 years, yeah.
10 years of working with Joseph. And then that was Force Center Live in Chicago. And since then, I have worked with all of you, and you've all worked with me, and we've all done stuff, and we're all significantly more depressed.
Hey, probably because of the connection. Yeah, no, wonderful. I saw that come up. There's a lot of celebration memories. I think a year ago today was day 2 of me in Paris, but we just got out of London. You and a lot of folks like Sean Room and Nikki were posting, Charlie were posting wonderful London celebration memories. It was taking me back. But I saw that one 5 years ago. Insane, my friend. Insane.
Crazy. 5 years ago, we met. I'd listened to your work, kind of knew who I was because of Casterly Talk and things and interactions. Yeah. Then we shook hands, and I thought, I'm going to ride this guy all the way to the top. I'm going to play this sucker like a fiddle.
Yeah, you're gonna ride me all the way to the top of a trash heap that is what's left of my career. I apologize.
The kingdom.
Take you farther.
The kingdom of knapsack. Jen Murrah says that's Forces of Destiny.
You and I did it again. So you and I did it again. We keep bringing up the acrylic out. That was like Forces of Destiny, Ken. Yeah, I'm glad you called that Forces of Destiny, Ken. Jen, of course, the lead writer on Forces of Destiny. But I was like, I saw that comment. I was like, FOD? Is what's Jen calling me? FOD?
At least that means like you can take comfort in knowing that you're not that level of nerd. That you're that normal.
Yeah. Molly Damon's here as well. Hey, Molly.
That's what I said to Alex when I married him. Gonna ride that boy to the top.
I'm gonna ride that explanation of the wars and the stars to the top, and it has worked for them. Point being, Alden, you should have married Alex and Molly. That's.
If Georgia was one of those polyamory locations, or not polyamory, I guess polyamory is anywhere you want. Polygamy is when you actually marry each other.
Yeah.
Polygamy. I mean, I'll be Alden Damon. I'll turn code on Diaz like that. Like, you kidding me?
You didn't mean this, but we got some good memories. Jerry, the Canon Junkie, who had a great call in on my Blathering Live show a couple weeks ago. Yes. Thank you, Jerry. Chicago in 2019 for real changed my life. Where I am is a direct result of that. See, that's what happens when you go to get Chicago-style pizza. It just changes your life. Oh, he's probably talking about something else.
Because then you realize that it's not pizza. And so you have clearer perspective.
There you go. 2 years ago from Anaheim. Scotty saying, love you guys. There you go. Oh, that's where they met. They met in Chicago? Love it. Classic. All right. Where do you want to go next, buddy? You got the helm. You're the captain. So,
as I said on Twitter, if I could encapsulate this week, the two biggest points. Dua Lipa has a new song, and OJ Simpson does not. And so, to say the least. So OJ's dead. I was sitting down at my desk at the day job, and I literally had this thought, and I texted it to you, like, all right, Ken's back this week. What are we gonna? What's gonna be the core of the show? And then OJ died, and I was like, well, that settles that. His death was announced by his family, which come on now. Like, I know that they have to release a statement, but it's like, get off Twitter, OJ family. Like, it's not your fault, but God, get off Twitter. Don't. I would have done a press release. I would not have put a tweet out from his account or anything because, boy. But it's weird in the sense that is still someone's father. That's still someone's grandpa. So there's that.
Yes.
To put in there first. It's like, like when any terrible figure dies, it's like he wasn't exclusively that to them. So I'm sad for their sadness. But in terms of our culture, you immediately were like, this is weird and big.
Yeah. I absolutely think it's big. And I agree with you. And with how you started out, and I just wanted to acknowledge it for myself again, where like all the jokes are great. They're hilarious. I love the clip that's going around of Conan O'Brien. He's on fire this week anyways, but of Jake Tapper asking him, do you have any jokes about OJ? He's like, I have a policy to not make fun of people on the day they pass. So call me back at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I think I have that kind of approach too, because his grandchildren can't help that. And it's complicated. It's not even a word that comes to mind, but also that I think is correct. But you know what I mean? So I do want to acknowledge that. I get it. And I get that's why I'm not saying I'm calling for decorum and respect on OJ. I'm just saying this is where life takes us some ways. But for me, when you text me and I was like, it's weird. First of all, wasn't aware that he was sick. Now that I need to be or have to be, right? That's not anyone's business. But it was a little bit of a shock surprise for me. And then it's one of those he's a signpost person. It's a zeitgeist moment where like the fact that he is now dead, which is good in my book, it's a sign of aging. It's a sign of that was 30 years ago. It's a crazy moment. And I want to get into the details of back then and what it meant and all this stuff. But it's not like I'm not mourning him. I'm just going, that is weird that he's not around anymore. That is weird that that chapter is essentially wrapped up and is now just history book pages. It throws you for a loop. It throws you. He was so big. That event was so big and generational, generation defining that it's my own mortality is now being wrestled with.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I mean, we have that in positive ways when we see some of our favorite actors, musicians, directors become 80-something-year-old guys, and so that's weird even in then, like knowing like, oh, any day I could lose, one of the last two Beatles. Any day I could lose this person. Like, but for it to be somebody that rattled culture to the point where our differing perspectives, which we'll get into, is like I grew up with OJ already being like American like folklore, like it was already like me, a child of the 2000s, like born in 95 but like conscious in the 2000s, was like OJ. We all knew there's this famous guy named OJ Simpson who killed people, and we all just sort of looked the other way on it. And we just kind of accept that he's just a weird, famous, maybe, possibly, probably killer.
Yeah, and then eventually, goes to a prison for what he served 9 years for kidnapping and robbery and all that stuff related to the memorabilia, which is that itself was surreal. That was surreal. Well, let's start there. Your perspective is interesting because every generation has this kind of thing, right? This isn't about generation versus generation. This is about the cards you're dealt as a generation, and this was huge for me. But your perspective on it is absolutely going to be different. You have no memory of it, just like I have no true memory of the PLO, crisis and hostages and all that stuff from the late 70s. But I do have a faint memory of Reagan being shot. But after that is when life starts actually becoming life in front of me. So for you, that's you. Now, born in 95, you're not really hearing about this until 2005?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, we just knew that he was the butt of jokes. I pointed this out on Twitter. It's just a weird coincidence that OJ dies now during the 20th anniversary re-release of Shrek 2, which has one of my favorite OJ joke in anything. I think it's the funniest OJ joke because it's a G-rated. Donkey turns into a white horse, and so they call him a white Bronco, and there's a white Bronco chase in the movie. And it's like no child's ever gonna get that. It's just literally the gingerbread man. Oh, Ken, the gingerbread man turns on TV, and instead of watching cops, he's watching knights. And they're like, we got a white Bronco heading through the forest, and like that's the whole joke.
I gotta watch that now.
And so Shrek 2 is in theaters, and people are seeing this joke again. But that was our first inklings, like hearing from older people, like, oh, that was actually OJ joke, or I'm sure there are South Parks and Family Guys, multiple that deal with him. It's always been an easy comedy to go to the OJ thing. I mean, even That's So Raven on Disney Channel does not have an OJ joke, but it's a clear reference to the trial. There's a court scene, and I think Raven Simone says, like, if the pants don't fit your thighs, you must apologize, or something like that. And back then we just thought like, she's just rhyming. It's funny. And then, we don't realize that what it is.
Johnny Cochran, Christopher Darden's big Bumble moment.
And then
the trial.
That too. Yeah. The team, knowing, like hearing my mom and my sister, I remember them talking about it because like they watch like, all that Kardashian stuff. And so it's like, it's connected to that family's history in big ways.
It's why we have that show. It's why we have that show.
Big 100%. Ways. Yep.
Yeah. In many ways. Yeah.
I remember it was either my mom or my sister mentioning when I was a kid, like and every single member of that man's legal team is dead now. And
Yeah.
then I was like, and they
Well, is
all
Barry
died,
Sheck
like,
dead? I'll check that up. You keep
there's like,
talking.
it's like weird, almost like they were damned for what they did type folklore.
A little bit.
And they all went down, and now
All right, Barry Sheck. All right, Barry Sheck is still alive. I just want Barry Sheck.
All right, you won, Barry.
He's 74. He's still alive.
You won. But yeah,
Yep.
Robert Kardashian, of course, and then you know it regains new life when they did the series, The People versus OJ,
which I liked. I watched that. Yeah,
very well acted series. Great performances from Travolta and Schwimmer and Sterling K. Brown. So yeah, I mean it's just that thing. My perspective is like it was a generally accepted fact in our history, in the same way I grew up with things, you know, like significant events of all sorts, assassinations or riots or anything. It was like, yeah, OJ did this and he got away with it, and there's nothing we can do. It was an early lesson in the fact that, as was told to me as a kid, we don't have a justice system, we have a legal system, and those are very different.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, it opened it up. Yeah, and I love the. We'll get into what is the similar thing for you growing up, because for me, so in '94, I was graduating high school, so about 18. In 19, the trial, I was working in just starting my radio career, just an interny kind of weekend guy. All that kind of stuff, but and so I don't want to be too long-winded on it there. And that Ryan Murphy show is, I think it does a really good job. It's obviously going to be sensationalized, and you know you can get lost in Travolta's eyes if you want on that episode, on those episodes. But it was, you know, these names: Barry Sheck, F. Lee Bailey, Johnny Cochran, Robert Kardashian. Robert Kardashian's eye roll of oh, I cannot believe he got off. I can't believe that happened. Is something that is a reference that Gen Xers or people or even older, a lot of my young boomer bosses from the time knew it. You knew what that meant, right? The stumble of the foreman reading, you know, Orenthal, James Simpson, all that stuff. Ito, Leno, the rise of Leno. It's all tied to that. But the case, it was the first time for me, and stuff had happened before in pop culture, but like you said, it wasn't clued in. I was 18 years old. OJ was someone. He was a celebrated athlete, but he retired in '79. But he was a broadcaster. He was a warm, loved personality. He was. I'm a big fan of the Naked Gun movies. Right, I haven't seen him 30 years, but like at the time, he's Norbert. He's beloved for those by my generation. We know him more as a personality than a sports star, a 2,000-yard runner with the Bills, all that stuff. And it was the first time that it was like, whoa, so that someone like that could be this evil or horrible. And it seems silly and stupid. But I think every generation has those moments where you learn for the first time that these folks are flawed at best, at worst, in this case, an absolute abusive a psycho killer, right? And it really ran my generation through a gauntlet of who we looking at, who we looking up to. Does anything matter? The Gen X kind of apathy that we all kind of were forming and had. It was mind blowing. And I'll kick it back to you for that. But then it gets into issues of, you're right, justice system versus legal system. Then this opened up. I'm a kid from the suburbs. This opened up wounds about policing. This opened up racial wounds that were present, but not for a kid like me in the suburbs. So to have, it was confusing. Like, well, he did it, but then there was a community that was like almost, and I don't want to put words in mouths, but almost like we don't care. We've got to get this win, right? Over the police. I would later on work with one of my bosses, Newmark Furman, had worked with him in internal affairs, and just when all that stuff came. It opened up all that to a kid from the suburbs and a generation in the suburbs, the realities of this world, and then the circus of it. I think a lot of there's stuff before, but I think I look at this as the modern breaking point for reality obsession going forward, where everything was a show. This court case was, dare I say it, content.
Yeah, I mean, it is there. This is not a this is a recent example. You know, we're both adults. Everyone in the comments saw this in real time just a few years ago. But is there a Johnny Depp Amber Heard without OJ? No, not in the way it happened. Is there probably, you know, you mentioned like what would be my example. I mean, like I was a newly conscious child who understood news during Michael Jackson stuff. And so like that was huge. And that also is the iconic, you know, the Black American change the world, all these things. And we're going to turn it into a sports event. And everyone's going to have a joke and everyone's going to have a commentary piece. But it all sort of goes back to this. Like you hear the stories of the you know, the chase especially, and people tuning in for that, and it being breaking news and coming in over game. I think the NBA finals of that year, like it breaks into that, and there's stories of Kurt Russell. There's a video that goes around sometimes of all the things that Kurt Russell has accidentally been present for, like that he's sort of like the Forrest Gump of terrible things by accident.
I didn't know.
So, dude, Kurt Russell had a brush with Bundy. Like they were in the same place at the same time, and like Ted Bundy's escape, he ate food off of a campsite table, and then Kurt Russell, like it matches up perfectly. Like wildlife. Last thing Walt Disney wrote before he died was Kurt Russell's name. Just weird stuff all throughout. But Kurt Russell lived, I guess, like a house or two houses down from OJ. So like he just walked outside onto his lawn, and you could see him in some of the footage. Like it was crazy. Like everybody like stopped what they were doing on every level of America, from your, you know, lower middle class people to your, you know, your movie stars. We're all looking at this thing like, oh my God, for the world to stop. You know, it was probably the first time it ever happened outside of a political assassination.
Political assassination. You know, and I want to, there, you know, the Lindbergh baby. All this, there's all these moments of history that you can point to and say the world was watching, or the world was gripped by a murder trial. But this was something new. The fervor was different because of the access we had, and I really do think it's a dividing line. There's a great doc. It's a 30 for 30 doc, I believe, on ESPN. That is This Day, and it's done without narration. It's done through news footage of the NBA Finals. There's a big golf event. I think it's Nicklaus's last game, and the Bronco chase. And it's haunting. It's sad. It's eye-opening. I highly suggest people watch it. But even that, I was aware of the Bronco chase, and when I'm talking about it opened up these realities to the suburbs. Like my mom and dad were in a restaurant picking up food or something, and it was on the TV, and I certainly won't say the word, but my mom said she came home confused at this, again, the same situation. It's like, OJ Simpson? Like, what are you talking about? The Hertz guy? Like, what are you talking about? But there was a guy next to her who screamed at the TV, I hope they get that N-word. And my mom came home aghast, like, kind of like, that's still happening? Which, by the way, she still has those kind of things. And so that opened up the divide in a way. We're 2-3 years removed from the Rodney King riots, which was big in my life because my uncle was an LAPD officer at the time, was involved in the riots. And so I had a certain perspective. I don't even know if it's a perspective I share anymore, but we were all coming around that time. And the tension started to be ratcheted up in a way that I think I hadn't felt before, too. Only because maybe I was a week older and aware of it. But that was the Bronco chase, too. It wasn't just a fun, low-speed chase that everyone, you know, it was one half. I'm dividing it by 50%, but you know what I mean. It was a large part of the communities going, go OJ, go, and there's other part going, get that blank, and you felt that. You felt that in a way I hadn't felt before.
And I think with that, it became, and you could speak to this better as somebody who was more conscious, but like it feels to me like this was the birth of everyone you know's got a theory and a take. In a certain way, like everybody that watched this trial felt like they too could make a judgment based on the pieces of info that we're getting out, and like everybody, like the birth of water cooler versions of like, no, he definitely did do it because this, and this. No, he definitely didn't do it because this, and this, and everybody started to attach, like you talked about with communities, but even down to just like the addiction that people have now to being right, particularly about parasocial shit. Like there are millions of people that will never know OJ Simpson and never did, that suddenly were like, I have the correct version of an event that has nothing to do with me is something that happens now all the time. Now, if a celebrity unfollows another celebrity, everyone's like, well, it's because of that interaction that they had at the gala. And crazy.
Yeah. I don't even know how people track that. Brie Larson unfollowed Gal Gadot. How did you know that? And again, some people, Scotty's pointing out Watergate, saying, I imagine you were too young for Watergate. Yeah, I wasn't alive, Scotty. Thank you. I wasn't alive.
Wow, Scotty. You bastard.
But Watergate is absolutely a watershed moment because, despite some issues that people had with Johnson and the office of the president, but with Vietnam and everything, the distrust in the government was a new thing. I mean, meaning people had long not trusted the government, but there was still this Eisenhower is our president, and whether you liked Ike or not, you will respect Eisenhower. And by Watergate, it's the lid's starting to be blown off by that, obviously, clearly, and leads to, I don't know, a little movie we like called Star Wars. But going back to this, it is. The armchair lawyers, as Kingsport Cal says in chat. But that's why, again, I know the team, right? I know that we all sat and watched the verdict. I absolutely remember it was an entire radio staff huddled around, those little portable TVs that you've seen in like ancient documentaries with a little antenna, and it's kind of grainy, it's kind of color, but it's flickering. 10 of us in the promotions office watching that. And even that office had a split when it was announced. One of my friends threw something in disgust. Other people cheered. Other people laughed. That's truly a where were you moment, and fascinating in its own.
It's powerful. It's weird, and then it also I know we talked about this a lot in high school in like government and economics class of like talking about like double jeopardy or rules and like the statutes and like how decisions like this force an entire nation, entire world to have to just deal with obvious miscarriages, like the fact that he was able to do like the "if I did it" stuff, or the sending people the Twitter DMs with the knife emojis, and like like, and I had his other crimes, but like the fact that he was able to become so out there and so depraved as a pulp culture personality. I don't know why I said pulp like I was British. A pop culture personality. That and we all just had to be like the uncomfortable friend, just like okay, he's he thinks it's funny, and the fact that there's nothing we can do about that, it really exposed a lot of flaws. Because you would think, I think if you explain this to a child, you would think that they could be like, but if he's sending people creepy knife stuff and publishing a book, don't you think that means we could revisit it? No, we can't. We can't revisit it. It's done.
And he lost the civil trial brought forth by Fred Goldman and the Goldman family, and they couldn't, in order to get the money back, they actually ended up buying the rights of that book. Judith Regan was going to publish it, but basically that didn't happen. And then Fred Goldman was like, I got the rights to the book, and we are going to publish this weird thing, and I know people are obsessed with it, and the money is going to be part of our settlement, our judgment, so to speak, but they'll not get my son back. That's a fascinating thing too as well. But I agree. I understand what you're saying too, where it's like it was. I don't want to say it became his branding, but it's just bizarre that it was almost like a wink and a nod from him. And you're right. You felt helpless. It was surreal. Doesn't even. It was maddening. It's still maddening when you go back and look at the trial about how this was not.
It's like
went that way, but again, it goes to the jury, the makeup of the jury. There's so much.
100%, and it's like I don't want to open up like two other huge ass topics, but you'll know what I mean. It is similar to when we talk about Trump with like the pussy tape, and like it's a common refrain, and I've said it too, and I believe it. How did it not end there? How did it not end there? And it's like if you look at like the OJ is a great example. We have an immense tolerance for lunacy and depravity and people turning this stuff into their brands. If you look at an example close to both of our pop culture histories and everything with like Vince McMahon, everything that happens when he is initially ousted, and then he opened up a random episode of WWE SmackDown, walking in the ring and just welcoming people to the show, just to remind people that he wasn't going anywhere until he did. Like, there is almost like this evil Icarus sort of thing where like they get so close to the sun that they just have to let people know that they ain't scared, like that they let people know that they won. It's very, very psychologically uncomfortable to see how he leaned in. I mean, all his Twitter videos of OJ on his golf cart and like, like, why are you on social media with us? Like, murderers should not be tweeting me. Like, it was so weird.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That's definitely part of your perspective, right? Part of your journey of just like you as a kid learning who is this guy? Let me take some notes. That's this guy. Why is he still? Why are we allowing this? And, and we're over here just like it's the juice. Like what? Like I agree with you.
The juice. Yeah.
Wow.
And then and the Beetlejuice 2 trailer that we talked about on the show, using "the juice is loose" as their tagline just last week. And now he's gone. So, there's someone in that office right now, like, we are going to roll back the OJ joke.
Well, and again, the morbid fascination is an interesting side effect of it there. And this is why that's not new. I know that's not new. That's our human nature. But on this level, where two humans, 35 and like 25, were brutally murdered. And yet, the fascination was on Dancing Itos on Leno. Or I had friends, and I'm not even saying this as like a finger wag because I got it. I had friends who traveled down here. I didn't live here yet, and they visited the sites, right? Like a morbid murder tour, which is still something you can do. Right? You can still go to the area of the Black Dahlia murder. You can still, and I understand it. I won't say it's right, but I understand it. I used to do a comedy show when I first started doing stand-up, down the street from the restaurant Ron Goldman worked at, or at least the location of it, around the corner from the Bundy Drive condo. Like, and you're aware of it. And it's like you want to, you're almost, it's calling to you. It's a weird morbid fascination that exploded in a way that I think I personally hadn't felt until 1995.
We talked about the birth of reality, particularly with how this makes the Kardashian family famous, and then that spins off into everything that Kris would then do with Caitlyn Jenner, and then with the family, and that's all its own history. But was this also the birth of true crime? I mean, you were a young broadcaster at this time. Like, did we have true crime as a fandom? I hate to use that word, fandom, but
I would love to have more of an expert bring that up of where they could actually point to the birth of true crime. But I would say in a very generic, uneducated kind of way that yes, right. This was the explosion. Cops was already out as a show. The reality, the obsession with crime, criminals, and those that are the bad boys that bring justice. All that stuff kind of existed.
Yeah.
Again, there were scandalous tales before this. I mentioned the Black Dahlia murder, which, by the way, our friend Matty Gunner says, wait, the Black Dahlia murder isn't just a band name. I'm pretty sure he's joking, but yes, no. But again, the Lindbergh baby, all these things. There's those moments that I'm not listening to all of them. But yeah, this one just seemed. It wasn't like podcast didn't exist, but it just the obsession with what happened, and like you said, the experts. We know these. I joke. I know Barry Scheck's name because he was this little Beatle haircut moppet of a lawyer who was also early on in the DNA analysis. Because remember, that kind of stuff wasn't present, and he was kind of the first to be like, hey, you can use DNA to determine things, this and that, and we can fudge, blah blah blah. That never was the same going forward, where we're always now more aware of the processes, or aware, it wouldn't be the first murder scene bungled by law enforcement in history. That's known, but it was on display in a way that was bizarre and frustrating, where you had cops going, yeah, I think I probably contaminated that. Sorry. The Furman thing, I bring up the Mark Furman thing. It was like they used something that I think had nothing to do with the actual crime scene and thing he was there for, but they used his character in a way that I'd never dealt with before and had trouble reconciling. All that there. So I think you're right. It's an uneducated guess, but yeah.
Sure, and I know that we have. I'm not sure if murderino is the overall term for true crime people. If that's just for one
That's just for
sect of it, just for one podcast.
my favorite murder, but yeah,
Just for my favorite
it
murder, yeah.
translates.
But we've got those people in our lives. I mean, like my sister and my mother have always been really into that. I mean, I know Grace knows has a wealth of knowledge about true crime and everything. So we will have to unpack that conversation at some point because it's a very some people you love it or hate it. Seems.
Yeah. Unsolved Mysteries was good. A good example. Scotty brings up one too. You know, the Manson murders. He's talking about Steel Drive. And I've been up to one of the Manson houses, and I didn't seek it out, but I had a friend in town visiting, and he'd rented a car, and he's like, "I want to go up there." And I was like, "Oh, let's not. Oh, actually, let's do that." Like it's weird, but yeah, there's those kind of things before too.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I mean, we haven't brought it up now in this whole conversation, but like in terms of our generation, 9/11 is like the big thing, but that's also every generation. We just so happen to be the kids of it.
Yeah, it's a cross section, right?
So that was huge. It didn't mark a time just for us in the way that OJ kind of marked a time just for Gen X in a certain way. You know, like Scotty in the comments brought up Sandy Hook. We were in high school for that. And you know, I'm from Connecticut, and like I knew where the school was, and my family knew where the school was, and it was, you know, that's weird. I mean, the shootings in that way are it's like tragedy strikes, but it doesn't have I categorize them differently because there's no cult of personality. It's not there's not a guy. You know, that's why Michael Jackson I think is the only close one.
Michael Jackson, but the Columbine has a little bit of that.
Yeah,
because it was not the first by any stretch of the imagination, but it was the first in a breaking news kind of fashion where even then in '99, the world stopped, right? And it was this absolute horrific thing that had two characters at the center of it that had a little bit of that, the trench coats, all those kind of things. Won't even say their name, but I agree with you where it's sadly like going forward, it's just like, it's a news event. It's a tragic
news event. And you're right to bring up Columbine because that's something that, like, as pop culture guys, as fans of television and film, you felt a little bit of that ripple where, like, if you're a wrestling fan and you go back to that time, there was like should Sting be wearing a long leather coat? Should the Matrix characters be having these long black coats? Like, there was all of that. Like, how much power are we giving to symbols? How much power are we giving to a silhouette, to iconography? In that way, and I would love to see the Bronco car sales after that chase. I would love to see what that looked like.
Through the roof. No, through the roof.
Wow.
Through the roof.
Wow. People are weird, man. People are weird.
People are weird.
People are sick. You would think it would be like, I'm not driving that.
I had a friend. He did not have it for this reason, but when I moved to LA and worked security. He drove a white Bronco for years. It's like I could not think of it. Every time I got in the car, I was like, really?
You're in the passenger seat, like, so interesting.
You got a car phone here?
Yeah.
Call Callings. Al Callings is here. And Kingsport Cal says something that I actually agree with from a certain point of view here. He says 9/11 won't be something everyone remembers in like 10 to 20 years. I actually really agree with that statement in a weird way where it is. It's Pearl Harbor to me, right? It's this newsreel.
It already is.
Yeah, it already is. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just the way of the world. Huh?
I think I was 18, 19. I was finishing up school and waiting to get my first radio job. I think I was still working at like Trader Joe's or something. And a customer said, like, yes, indeed, 2 bells. I think the first group of high schoolers at that time, the freshmen in high school, were the first people to learn about 9/11 as a historical event that happened before they were born.
Right.
And now there's been a few of those groups, several. And we are in that place now where, you know, America has appropriately branded it as like never forget, because you shouldn't. But there is it's in that territory now of like, the second that any comedy about it became something that people just generally just like laughed at and moved on from, it was over. Like it's in the we're in that place now where it's like every year on 9/11 you see memes about how like the Despicable Me Minions did 9/11. And you know, and or the Bush finding out about it is such a common meme now for everything. The whisper.
Sir, there's a second plane meme. It's
Yeah.
bizarre because I giggle at and despite my intentions not to find any of that funny, I still laugh
Yes.
at like it's
You still laugh at it because it's
still
we laugh through pain, which is a
yeah, and
big
that's
thing
fine.
that that's
But
and that's a whole 2-hour comedy conversation too.
yeah,
But
yeah, and I don't. It's interesting too that when you talk about that I definitely had some. I had one friend, acquaintance, really, to be honest. I still connect with her on Facebook. She was a comic, but she was going through some things, and she tried to do. This is like 2003 or four. She loved doing 9/11 humor, and like she would get like banned from MySpace. Like just was comedy clubs wouldn't book her.
wow.
And looking back, I still don't agree with what she like. It was a thing. It was a thing. It wasn't free speech or anything. It was just like, what do you do? You're not speaking any truths. You're just intentionally poking. You're intentionally poking. There's a different thing to me. But there was this kind of feeling. We've talked about the 9/11 thing before. The will we ever be funny again? Is comedy dead? But you said something that made me think about the OJ trial. Taking it back to that, and what was the ramifications of it? Was the jokes were immediate. The jokes were immediate. It was broadcast every night on Leno. Like he had already gotten in the ratings head. He already used the and I don't have anything for or against Leno, by the way. I've met him. He's been nice to me. But like he used the Hugh Grant thing. He leaps over Letterman. And then this is perfectly timed for dumb water cooler banal humor of dancing Itos and gloves not fitting. It was and it taught us of just like there are no murders, there are no victims. There's just a series of joke opportunities. Versus like Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald. Cal brings it up. I think Scotty brought it up, and I saw some wonderful clips yesterday of Norm. As someone who was there, someone who was a giant SNL fan and a giant Norm Macdonald fan, I got to tell you something. They were not super well received at all by anyone. I think history loses that a little bit. Norm becomes this hero standing up against Don Ohlmeyer and NBC and speaking the truth. And it's brutal. The jokes are wonderfully brutal in a truthful way. The one he does at the ESPYs, if you ever seen that clip, and it was going around yesterday, where you have Charles Woodson here, Heisman Trophy winner, and Norm's like, that's great. No one's ever going to take that from you. Unless you murder your wife. And like they cut to Ken Griffey Jr. and he's like, whoa, but I think history now, pop culture records it as yay Norm. I got to tell you, it was not the vibe because he was going against everything else. Everything else was dancing Itos. He was going, the dude murdered him. And it was not well received. It was not well received.
Yeah, and then that's again, it could be such a long conversation of like, what's the time frame? When do we do it? I like Conan saying, I have a rule, I don't do it on the day of, or or Colbert being like, hey, we made Kate Middleton jokes, we had no information, maybe we should have waited.
Yeah,
sending her love, things like that. It's going to be always your mileage may vary. There are people that are like, there are people that staunchly, and I get it, you never joke about 9/11 ever. And I respect that. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily. It's about where you're coming from. What are you commenting on? And that's the source of Norm's joke is like bad people that do heinous things like murder are fair game because they're bad.
They're bad.
So it's like, I agree with that. But it was a culture at the time of like, do we joke about tragedy? And I think Norm, I can't speak for him and I never met him, and rest his soul. But like, I'm sure his point of view was, I'm not joking about their tragedy. I'm making fun of a bad person.
No. Yeah. That's what was so weird. Again, Weekend Update was my favorite thing. That's the thing I wanted to do growing up. And so I love Norm, but Norm even as he's remembered as perhaps the best by some folks. I don't even agree with that. I think Dennis Miller is the best, but McDonald, it was not, even his normal jokes were not well received. He had such a Norm style. History has recorded it as this brilliance that was present from the word go. It was not. The uncomfortable jokes, the silence was present in almost every bit. But But there was a powerful truth behind. Looking back now, there was I think it was 11 minutes. Someone tweeted out, it was going around yesterday, 11 minutes 30 seconds of Norm Macdonald jokes, and it didn't even have the big one on after the verdict was announced, which is this great bit of, it's official, murder is now legal in California. I think that's one of the greatest jokes of all time from a news event. But 11 minutes of Norm just speaking a almost like, no, don't let him get off with. He did this. He did this, and it cost him his job.
And when people say, a lot of the times this gets misappropriated as a defense to just do whatever and say nothing. We hear it all the time, like we are the truth tellers, we are the societal commentators, all that stuff that comes from like your least favorite comic. But like that is when it's true. That is somebody saying like we're guys, like what are we allowing to be acceptable right now? That is when somebody is a truth teller, and that's when you appreciate it, like even in small ways. And that's when any of these events are okay. Like, do I think like we should be joking about like any of these like school shootings? Like maybe not. Am I gonna say it's impossible to have the joke that hits? No, I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure it's possible. I know it's possible because we've heard people joke about the genocides of history. We've heard people joke about 9/11. Like it is possible, and I think the OJ trial probably helped set a tone for that.
I think so.
I mean, what was your first year doing stand-up?
2003.
2003. Like I'm sure you probably heard a lot of OJ. Like it was still probably fresh enough. Like
it was.
Everybody probably had their take, their version.
Absolutely. Yeah. Less in sketch comedy world because sketch comedy is less about that kind of thing. But it was definitely there. But it also had faded a little bit even by that time. I mean, probably because of 9/11. But
and then everybody switched to Michael right after. I mean, Michael was like being in elementary school during the Michael trials, and then like in middle school. I think it was the summer between middle school and high school for me when he died.
Yeah. How do you process? You're an old soul. That's why I work with you. But you just made me think of something like the Michael Jackson trial, or not trial, but his death. How do you process? How do you come to an understanding of who these people are, what they might have meant, both in history, pop culture, and lives of other folks, even though you're not maybe as connected because you can't be because of your age? The example I give, when Michael Jackson died, it was insane around here. And I was with my former girlfriend at the time. We were watching the news, and her dad was there. Her dad's 20 years older than me, whatever. And she understood who he was, and she wasn't a kid. She understood, but she didn't grow up with him being the guy who did the moonwalk, and the world went, wow. They didn't do none of that was in her mind, and so she was like, I just don't get it. Why is everyone freaking out about this? And taking all of the complications and the bad things around his life, me and her dad were just like, what don't you get? This is one of the groundbreaking individuals of history. This is someone who was perhaps one of the biggest stars in the world, which in a weird, not about being famous, but just like, this is someone who changed the game. And she couldn't come to terms. She just was like, I don't get it. Because her view of him was like, he's like the old creepy guy, which isn't wrong. But so when you're sitting there and you learn who OJ is, or you learn all the stuff later on, even though you're a pop culture heavy guy and you get it, you still don't have the perspective of being there when these people, you had no comprehension of the importance of OJ Simpson rushing for 2,000 yards, right?
Not at all.
How do you work through all that? No right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
I don't know if this is morbid or not, but I have a huge fascination with how people perceive the dead. And like, I'm not a true crime person, and I'm not even that interested in the details of the death. They're like, whatever. Like I want to know, like, sure, get my facts straight. But when someone's gone, that couple of days after, is always fascinating to me because you get to see mythology solidify. And so much like a Star Wars fan approach to everything in life, like much like we do in Star Wars, I sort of approach that in reality. And going to Michael's, I remember Michael dying. I was on MySpace talking to my at the time girlfriend and my middle school girlfriend, Melissa. Shout out Melissa. And we talked. She was like, "OMG!" Like, all lowercase. "OMG! Michael Jackson is dead." And I was like, "What?" You go to Google, whatever. And he and I went out to the living room, and my sister was like standing in front of the TV, or maybe it was my mom. I can't remember. And seeing people burst into tears over someone we didn't know, that was huge. That was big. So my approach is always in the, how is mythology solidified? What are we going to take forward? That's why I laugh about like controversial actor, athlete, and murder suspect. Okay, I guess that's where we're going with this one. That's the angle we've chosen. But my perspective on it is always that way. Like, I love one of my favorite parts of the year of TV watching is in memoriams at award shows. I love a moment when everyone says, "This is where we've been. This is why we're here where we are." Maybe that's the old soul stuff, like approach to it, but I love that stuff. I love reflecting and I love looking back. And so my approach to it is always based in separating fact from fiction, but I love the fiction. Like people look down sort of, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our episode about sincerity, and people make fun of actors and things for their immense emotions, and they call it actor brain. I love actor brain. I love actor brain. I love American folklore. I love the way our culture shapes. I love the fact that, like, when Michael Jackson died, one of my first thoughts or experiences after was like looking at YouTube videos of him and seeing people faint at his concerts, like on like the Dangerous tour or whatever it was, when he would come up out of the stage and women were fainting in the crowd before he sang anything, just because they saw him. And it was sort of like, as a kid that was into like, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, like that type of stuff, I remember thinking like, is that like what a god like actually is? And and so when you look at someone like OJ, it's like, this is what happens when like a god falls. And and even with like Johnny Depp, we mentioned him earlier with his trial, Johnny Depp was a godlike figure for us in our culture. I mean, like, he was absolutely untouchable. He was one of the final movie stars of that era. It was, everything he did was absolute gold, especially if you were like a Hot Topic ass kid like I was. And to see him now become a joke, it's like we're seeing the legacy rewritten, and when he's gone, what happens then? So I'm fascinated by that stuff. I look at death very, very much in terms of like narrative.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I know it's just interesting, and anyway, it wasn't even like I was saying my girlfriend at the time should have respected him or this. It was just like, I'm fascinated by it's not even a lack of awareness. It's the perspective you have from the generations. Weird stuff.
By the way, just while we were having this tangent, my nephew texted me about something unrelated. My nephew is 13 and he's about to be 14. And so I said, "Hey, real quick, just because I'm curious, did you know who OJ Simpson was before he died yesterday?" And my nephew said, "I think I've heard the name, but no, I never knew who that was."
Yeah.
And so it's like we're already removed even more. Yeah. Another age bracket down. And we've gone from, he's a crazy guy that we kind of know about, to, no, I didn't know who he was.
I didn't know who it is. And again, as it should be. Like, this is how it works. It's just, I love analyzing it. And this was the thumbnail today. This was the how history and history events form us, right? From trials like this to 9/11 to shootings to tragedies. Yeah. And what it does to us. I mean, my worldview was challenged and changed from the OJ trial and the whole OJ thing. Yeah. Laserbolt says it. I mean, Laserbolt is a little older than me, but OJ was a massive star, a massive loved star. He was an American dream story all throughout the 80s. And it was hard to understand and reconcile what was going on. So anyways.
What's really weird is, and I didn't have this thought until now, and I'm not really, that knowledgeable about sports or anything, but with that lens, sports fans that have broken through, sports stars that have broken through into just the general pop culture, it would be like if tomorrow Travis Kelce committed a heinous crime, a heinous violent crime. It would be like someone on that level, or 10 years ago, maybe like Brady or Jeter, or like it would be like those people of like, oh my God, like the guy we rallied around did the worst thing a human can do.
Yeah, absolutely. It bears further conversation too. We mentioned the Cosby of it all. We mentioned all that kind of stuff early on. But yeah, and how people can struggle to accept it or believe or say like, oh, there's no way. Like I just get it because you're just connected in a way and you're disengaging from it. It's part of the legacy of things like that. Great stuff.
Indeed.
Which is a weird sentence to say to describe the death of
Look,
a murderer of two innocent people. But
indeed, like it's just like, again, it's been long enough that they're a part of this narrative, and I wish that there was a way that this could provide their families any type of peace. I doubt it. I already saw one quote from the family that was like, "We have mixed feelings on this. We're not popping bottles." That's not an exact quote, but like I'm sure that's the vibe of like, and then you got to explain it to like your children and his grandchildren. It's a lot, and it'll always have ripples, and people will feel different ways about it. And there are some things we're just never going to agree on. Like if they tomorrow they announce an OJ biopic, there are people who would be like, "How dare! It's not to be entertainment." But then there are other people that are like, "Well, it's fine, and we don't mind."
Yeah. Even that, like I said, I liked the Ryan Murphy series, not because it was great drama, and that was the thing, right? That the whole trial, though, it was great drama. That's the problem. It wasn't real life to all of us, but I also think it might help expose it and bring understanding too as you look back. So yeah, but I'm with you. Which way are you going to go? Which way are you going to go?
All right, that sort of is like a massive entertainment story in and of itself. I don't know if you were about to.
No, I was gonna. We got a little time left here. You had mentioned Dua Lipa, and I didn't want to leave you hanging. I didn't want to leave you Dua Lipa out there all by yourself. What do you got?
I do a Lipa by myself all the time. So, and you can interpret that in any way you like. Our third single off the new album, Radical Optimism, called Illusion, is out. It bangs, it rips, it slaps, it does all the stuff that we describe things being good in very violent ways now. It just occurred to me. That song bangs. That song rips. That's like it just is. It's awesome. It's great. It's super cool. It's going to be the dance hit of the summer. That's all I got to say about that. We can't. This is not radio where we could throw on 30 seconds of it because then our channel will get shut down. It does not work that way, even for editorial. So you just can't. It's a lot of fun. Can't wait to throw it on at the clubs and dance with Ken.
All right, let's do it. I'll go.
Do you dance?
I mean, do I actively seek it out? No, but if I'm at a wedding, I'll own that dance floor. I don't go. Can't remember the last time I've been to a club. And it's not any. It's just like that's a lot of energy. But yeah, I'll dance.
A lot of noise too. And then the other entertainment thing. I mean, CinemaCon was this whole past few days in Vegas. I know Ellis was out there with Rotten Tomatoes and RB3 and other people that we've worked with and know, and that you just spent time with. So Ellis is the man can't stay off the road. Tons of news there, tons of stuff we haven't seen yet. So it's kind of like exciting to hear about, but we'll see what happens. News that broke today though is that a Chris Farley biopic is officially in the works, with Lorne producing, Josh Gad making his directorial debut. So Josh Gad directing, and then Paul Walter Hauser as Chris, which is, I think, pretty great casting. I know you've at least crossed paths with Paul a little bit.
I have not. No,
you haven't. Okay, maybe not.
No, I know
he was in this movie trivia world.
He did a little schmo-downing and appeared on some of the shows, but it was after I left Collider. All accounts, a nice guy from those that have met him and talked to him. But yeah, I did not. But his big career break was Richard Jewell, the '96 Olympic bombing movie, right?
Yes.
Eastwood. Interesting.
So he's gonna be Farley with, I guess, Lorne producing makes a lot of sense. I guess he would know.
Lauren got a lot of folks around Belushi got burned by the Belushi book in the '80s, where they felt it was a takedown and a hit job, but a lot of them had participated and they didn't have a lot of control over it. Not that it seems weird to say that Lauren didn't have control over Belushi's life and legacy, but it's not unlike some of the stuff with the book that came out in 1988 about John Lennon. That was inflammatory, and some of it true and uncomfortably accurate. So that makes some sense that Lauren would have some sort of ability to be protective of the narrative.
Yeah,
Which I don't think is a
in
bad
the way.
thing. I just it's
No, especially if it's like
fascinating.
much like Bohemian Rhapsody, the conversation shifted as they made it. Like
Yeah,
it is no
yeah,
longer the Freddie Mercury movie; it's the
uh,
Queen movie.
yeah.
It's like, is this the Farley? Is this the life and times and death of Chris Farley, or is this the story of Chris Farley, the iconic cast member?
Or is it a
Which
David Spade film? It's a true story of David Spade.
Spade will be playing himself de-aged. That is a
Yeah,
scoop. I can no, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe I don't know.
It's fascinating.
Um,
It's
you would
it's
hope
interesting.
that
Yeah,
Sandler and guys like that at least get to throw in their
they're
stories.
yeah, and again, they're all understandably correctly protective of him. And so I'm curious to see how far what they'll think about it. They might just not want to revisit it, or they might want to keep the legacy alive, depending on what the story is. Clearly, if someone like Josh Gad and Paul Walter Hauser, like it's probably being done with love, and probably trying to understand it. There's a lot to unpack with Farley. I love the interview with Bob Odenkirk saying, I look back on that Chippendale sketch with a lot of anger and hate. Like that was not a good thing that we did. It helped make him a star, but it also helped destroy his psyche even more. Like it's fascinating. So I'm curious to see where they take it and where they go.
Now, I don't want to, we're going to wrap up in a second. If anyone has any questions or anything, now's the time. You'll leave them in the comments, anything like that. We'll answer them before we get out of here. But this could be a hour-long conversation. So you and I, via text, we recently got into a conversation about Saturday Night Live, which we've done at different times because we both like it. And obviously it was fundamental, especially to your life and path.
Very much so.
Yeah, like absolutely a cornerstone of Knapsack is the entire institution of SNL. You know the history. Where does Farley fall for you in terms of not rank? I'm not like, yeah, what tier is Farley? But in terms of like when you think about SNL, is he like a pillar?
He's not. Yes and no. I think he's one of the greats in terms of a star maker, because you kind of knew right away. I remember some of the early stuff. I remember one of the early ones he did. I think he was portraying Tom Arnold with Roseanne, and it was a Weekend Update shot, and you saw his like ass crack a little bit or something like that. Again, fat guy, funny, fall down kind of humor that Farley felt he had to do. And it cuts back to Miller, and Miller's like, did I just see the new guy's ass? And like that was one of the moments that launched him, right? It was the old guard acknowledging the new guy. He was doing something wild and crazy, and so that elevated him fast. The Chippendale sketch was hilarious at the time. Like, that's I understand. I really like Odenkirk's take on it, but it was just like that and the Matt Foley of it all. I have a weird relationship with that era of SNL because it was very much my era in the sense of 88 to 91, 92 was the, oh, I love this thing. And then like 92 to 94, 95 was like, I want to go do this thing. And look, I don't love a lot of the cast during that time. Like I just watched Happy Gilmore in Boston with Mark Ellis. We sat down and watched Happy Gilmore. I'm generally a fan of Sandler. I am a fan of David Spade in a general sense, especially back then. But it's a weird era because a lot of the comedy doesn't stand up in terms of social issues. It's loud and obnoxious comedy. And I felt Farley was deeper than that, but he was stuck in that with that whole cast, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess there's so many what ifs. Like, what would Farley have been if he? I mean, we know that he was about to break through into other avenues. Like he was the original voice of Shrek, and you can hear those recordings. And like that would have been. I mean, well, hard to say. Would it have been the same smash without Mike Myers doing the Scottish voice? But like, could Farley have transitioned into big family films in that way? Could he have transitioned into like? Would Farley have had his Punch Drunk Love? Where we're like, oh,
I think he could have.
You can do that. Yeah.
Once he
Sandler was able to do that pivot.
I think if Farley had felt he had been, if he'd been given permission to do that, which is a weird thing to say, because if you get into I don't know every aspect of his story. I'm not a Farley expert. Loved by everyone, beloved for a reason, but felt, fat guy, small suit type of humor had to be how he got forward. Which because that's probably how he did. That's he had to do that because society viewed it that way. He couldn't be anything but the fat guy. If he was allowed to see past that and work through it all, I think he would have had that punch drunk love moment. I think he would have.
I hope so. And I know Sandler, obviously, if you go on everyone that hasn't seen it, the Chris Farley song that is in his recent specials is beautiful. And in the song and out of the song, he talks about how when his kids ask who the funniest person you knew was, Dad, he says it was Chris. That's the best.
Yeah.
Questions that we'll rattle off and then get out of here. Kingsport Cal, crew socks or ankle socks? Look, man, I'm gonna tell you right now. If the sock is not long, I don't want to see it. The shorter the sock, the worse the sock is.
Same.
Those socks you can't see, like for Vans and stuff, get them out. Get them out.
Get them out of my life.
Yep. Long socks with a fun design. That's where I'm at.
I've been an old man on vacation since I was a kid. My socks almost need to go up to my thighs. Like because if I feel them, I don't know if my are sensitive ankles a thing. I don't know, but if I feel the goddamn sock on the lower part of my ankle, I go batty. I'm constantly pulling them up. And then little ankle socks. Like I played tennis for a little bit, and play on a hot day, put some shorts on, you put on ankle socks. Great. I hate it. I'm the weirdo playing tennis in full workout gear.
Hell yeah, I respect that. Cooper, hey Cooper, star of our last video. Who's gonna play Alden in the biopic? I genuinely do not know. Even if that was a real thing, a lot of people have like, oh, this is the actor that I feel looks like me or is like me. I don't feel like I have that. I know that Ken is John Slattery, as I've said to you via text. John Slattery, he's older than Ken, but I see what people are saying. I
just got it again. He did a cameo on the Kristen Wiig SNL last week, right? Sturger actually texted me. She goes, "Has anyone told you you look like Will Forte?" I'm like, for most of the 2010s, including when I was at the Ground. And when I was at the Groundlings, he was just getting on SNL in 2002 when I was leaving the Groundlings. Even going back then.
I should have been a good broadcaster and uploaded this to the StreamYard, but I forgot. And this reminded me. Cooper actually texted me and said, "Hey, we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and don't you think that this alien dude looks like Ken?" And so I'm just going to show you like this, and it kind of does.
It really does.
Kind of does.
Oh my God, he's got the nose and he's got
That's a nap sock. That is a nap sock right there.
There you go. Do it.
Yeah,
that's it.
So I don't know this actor's name.
That's
but
frighteningly. That would throw me for a loop.
Yeah.
I get the Segura a lot now.
Yeah, there it is. Deep Space Nine.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, but something about my Mad Men rewatch. I texted Ken and I said, "This is so you." He just has the same like he could deliver knapsack material. I feel
John Slattery. I think he could, and my memory with him is interesting because I first knew about him on the TV show Ed when he was the older guy stealing Julie Bowen away from Tom Cavanaugh's Ed character, and so I didn't like Slattery, and then I eventually became that guy. So
yeah, it's interesting, right?
Maybe you're right.
Yeah, so I guess like for me, I don't know. I can tell you the actor that I lately, because I've seen like 5 or 6 of his films this year just by coincidence. He keeps popping up, and I love him. You love him. We look nothing alike. We don't have the same national background. We don't have anything, and obviously we have different lived circumstances. Given that he has his unique experience, and that's Peter Dinklage. And Peter Dinklage is like he's a person with dwarfism, and I'm not. Something about the way his characters are, I'm like,
okay.
I feel like
I would love it
if we abandoned my look entirely and just let him act like me. Can you see Peter Dinklage grabbing a phone and tweeting somebody?
Sure.
Sure. I can. I really can.
There's some. Yeah. I don't. I'll have to look up a choice for you, but until then, I'll go with that.
I just feel so connected to that guy lately.
Lovely.
Is Ken aware of the 1 kilogram of cheese pizza at Japanese Domino's? So Matty Gunner and I talk about Japan next year all the time, and he sent me this picture and said, "Hey, there's a Japanese Domino's has a cheese pizza with 1 kilogram of cheese." Okay. So are you in?
I mean, I'm not going to be out. I'll say that.
You'll
I'm not
participate.
going to be out. Currently, I do not anticipate being in Japan for Celebration 2025. But if I do, yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested. You had me at cheese.
Cheese it unites us all. It unites us all. I'm just looking at questions, looking at things. I love laser ball. The kid from Stranger Things could play Alden. First of all, which one? Second of all, I am a solid decade plus older than
I could see
those kids.
Sadie Sink could play. She'd be.
Oh, I would
great.
be honored. I would be
great.
absolutely honored.
Yeah, she'd be great.
That kid from Stranger. I love the idea of just spinning the wheel. Any of them will do.
Spilling wheel. Got to go. All right. There you go. Okay, we got to start getting out of here.
We're gonna start closing out.
I'm getting telegrams for that meeting I told you about. I gotta prepare for that.
Indeed.
The kid with the weird gums.
No,
it's not getting better.
Laser ball.
It's not getting better.
I love Dustin though. Shout out to Gatton Matarazzo. Matarazzo.
I stood behind him in the Last Jedi. We were both trying to get into the Last Jedi premiere red carpet, and we both were having issues. I was like, I'm in good company.
And he is a Broadway star, great singer. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Ken Plume says Alden is all the kids from Stranger Things, and Ken is all the adults. David Harbour could play me. David Harbour and I have the same energy.
Look, can Winona Ryder play you on next week's episode? Because
yeah, there you go. One question I need to address at the end of the show: when are you doing Blathering next show next week? Next Thursday night is April 18th. My birthday is April 19th. So we'll do a show next week on my birthday here for Anytime, but my Blathering Live birthday edition will be next Thursday night, Alden or Kingsport. I know you often work on Thursdays. Sorry, that's the day that kind of works for me. So there you go.
And I will start planning the birthday edition right now.
There you go. Do a Mick Foley rock. This is your life. There you go. That'll work. There
Ken's ex-girlfriend is here.
No. Easy to track down. All right. We're almost out of here, but we are going to do a Pop Rockin' Radio Word of Wisdom brought to you by Pop Rockin' Radio, my show, which returns tomorrow night. Going to do a show 6 p.m. Pacific, an hour of power of music. I was going to pick a lyric here, and I was like, we're talking about OJ. We're talking about the trial. We're talking about 1995. What from that era just kind of had the right feel? Not about murder and true crime and tragedies, but just what was going through a lot of our heads in 1995. And I've selected Alanis Morissette from Hand in My Pocket and 1995's Jagged Little Pill album. And what it all boils down to is that no one's really got it figured out just yet. Well, I've got one hand in my pocket. The other one is playing the piano. What it all comes down to, my friends, is that everything is just fine, because I got one hand in my pocket. And the other one is hailing a taxi cab. That is because that is the Gen X vibe from 1995. We had none of us figure it out, but you know what? I'm going to make a peace sign. I'm going to give a high five. I'm going to hail a cab and move on forward in life. Alanis Morissette, another artist that I don't think you can fully appreciate how giant she was unless you were running around in 1995, and I was as well. There's still a lot of respect for her. I actually watched her and Taylor do a duet of You Ought to Know at some concert. It popped up on YouTube, and I watched it. It was great. Taylor awesome. Paid her respect, but she was giant in 1995, a titan of radio airplay, and I think that is a Gen X vibe for me.
Hell yeah. Jagged Little Pill, one of the greatest records of all time.
It is indeed. All right, that is it. Don't forget to subscribe to this here YouTube channel if you haven't already. Follow us at the socials down below. Help us build this channel out. Good to be back with you, buddy. Good to be in the saddle with you. Thanks to you and Coop Boopenheim for a great conversation last week. Check it out if you didn't get a chance. All right, that's my final word. Yours? Let's get out of here.
My final word is be conscious of history because you never know. You might end up a meme 20 years later.
There you go. We'll see you next week, friends. Bye.